Cheers, my guy.
Cheers.
Welcome to Driving with Dave.
Thank you.
So excited today to talk to Emmy-nominated journalist and star, one of the men from, I believe, Claire Crowley season of The Bachelorette, Garin Flowers. How are you?
I'm good. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. This is a long time in the making because we actually met last December. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you got a lot going on. I want to talk about a ton of different things, but let's jump right into it. Yeah. What's more nerve-wracking, meeting the Bachelorette Claire Crowley or meeting The Rock?
I would say meeting The Rock. I was stuck. I was like,
did you start touching him? What do you even do with?
He was a lifelong just idol of mine. So to meet that person after years of just looking up to this person, it was just unreal. And yeah, I shook his hand and I was like, this dude is a mountain.
He's just
literally a mountain.
I mean, he's just ready to go. Charisma.
Super charismatic and the nicest guy. I mean, he could probably beat up a room full of 100 people, but also is the kindest person. He's
been around for so long. You know, my stepsister loved him when he was Rocky, like when he was like just getting into wrestling. She was huge into wrestling and you know, People's Elbow and all this, and he was big then, but he's global now. And now, were you interviewing him for like red carpet duties? Like what were you working on?
So I used to be a television reporter in Florida covering like murder and crime and politics and education and all that. Moved to LA to pursue entertainment hosting. And my first job in entertainment was, which I still have, is interviewing actors for Cinemark theaters, and then we promote their films. So they sent me to Cabo, hard work.
Nice.
They sent me to Cabo to interview the cast of Jumanji, which was The Rock, Kevin Hart, Jack Black, Awkwafina, and some more. Yeah. And it was crazy. I mean,
one of the
best
gig.
Experiences. Yeah.
You've been all over, and I have a ton I want to get into. You went to the same college that my mom went to, University of South Florida.
What?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I just found that out. And you got what are you, a professor at USC now? You're teaching journalism there?
I'm a professor at USC, which is awesome. I mean, I was a kid watching the Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush, championship days, and I would have never thought, being this kid in Florida, I'd be in LA teaching at USC. So it's been a fun experience.
What a blast. I guess we can feed the Bachelor beast first. So what got you onto the show? You were there obviously for a very big part. I mean, you were there for the dead center of the COVID. You were the first COVID season, I believe, right? Yeah.
We were.
Yeah, Claire's season was postponed, and then it shot in Palm Springs?
Yep.
All right, tell me about this process.
It's crazy how life comes together and how just like the smallest little things can lead you somewhere big. When I was leaving Florida, there were these women I sat next to that were like, oh my God, you're going to LA, you need to be on The Bachelorette and Vanderpump Rules and all these things. I'm like, I don't watch either of those shows. I don't want to do any type of reality TV. Absolutely not. And I think in the back of my head, I just didn't think I was like quality enough or good looking enough to go on like a reality show, which was, obviously
the looks of these people. I mean, right though, they're like
people.
There's like football players, and it's like high school on steroids just to see some of the people they come up with.
Yeah, I mean, people will make fun of reality stars, but like they don't understand. A lot of these people are some of the best fit, most intelligent people you'll ever meet. And it's like you wouldn't even, you're not even half of this person. You know what I'm saying? Like this person's a lawyer and 6'3" and jacked. You know what I'm saying? Like the people who go on these reality shows aren't just like, nobodies.
And it's usually people sort of searching, because a lot of times it's people that don't have other jobs going on or they're between jobs. You have to kind of be in the right place, right time to do that. Obviously with your season, it's the pandemic, so a lot of people not working. Did you know in advance it was Claire, and like, did you get any say, or would they just like, hey, you're coming to this next season?
So I absolutely knew it was Claire, and the reason is, like I was mentioning, these women I worked with were telling me you need to do all these reality shows, and I was like, absolutely not. So I started dating this woman during the pandemic, and we hit it off. I mean, I was absolutely smitten by her. I thought that was it. Like, this is my person. And that was the first time I had been involved in like a love bombing situation where this person just wanted all of my love, all of my attention, and then as soon as she got it, was like, actually, no, I'm good. Just out of nowhere, when things were just like absolutely magical, like just like a fairy tale almost. She was like, oh, I'm good. And so, man, I was just like absolutely heartbroken. And I remember Claire's season had been delayed by a couple months because of the pandemic, and I kept seeing advertisements for her, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to get over my ex by going on The Bachelorette. Like, forget her. So I'm like mad applying, like angry, heartbroken applying to the show. And then a month later, I'm healing. I've gotten through it. I've lost all this weight. I'm just like healthy. I'm not drinking. And then they called me, and it was insane. And it was like 3 Skype meetings because they were trying to get it going.
Right.
So I didn't have to go through that whole long process. And then next thing you know, they were picking me up to go to Palm Springs.
Boy, that must be so surreal. Now, I hear more about love bombing from men to women, and I wonder if it's because men will, when it comes to getting laid, you got to sell yourself. So guys will oversell, maybe I want to make you this, and then they have sex, and then they're like, yeah, no, I don't know anymore, So to hear it from a woman love bombing a guy, that's something I haven't heard much. When did you know you were being love bombed, or was it something in hindsight you saw? Like, did she just pull the rug out from underneath you?
It was definitely in hindsight, and that is something that men typically don't do that work to understand how you're treating this person. And so, for me, it was like I've always taken a long time to get into a committed relationship, at least 5-6 months minimum. So with this woman, I mean, she was just saying all the right things. We were just hitting it off. It was during the pandemic, so we have all day to talk and have that time. And I was like, you know what? I've always done it this way. Let me try it this way. Let me just dive in. And I dove in, but I didn't realize till like after it was all said and done, because after it all pretty much was ending, a friend of mine was like, man, there's got to be something there. Like, you're such a great dude. Like, and so I started checking her social media, and it was all right there. All in the comment section, flirting with other guys, saying the same exact things to me she was saying to someone else. And I was like, it was never real. And that was painful. That was painful.
I guess, to put yourself in someone else's shoes, it could be like an insecurity thing, wanting value. Because everyone always talks about daddy's issues, but it's usually in reference to the women. But when it comes to men have issues too. And, we try to put labels on why things don't work out. And maybe she sees you on TV and she realizes, oh, geez, I lost a good thing or whatever.
Yeah.
You just never know. But it's always important whether you're, when you come out of relationships, to learn from that so that you don't make that same mistake again and waste everyone's time, it seems.
Yeah, exactly. You have to learn and grow, and you hope you don't impart your trauma on other people and that you give other people a chance, but it's hard not to change when someone hurts you in that way. So I'm definitely not as quick to dive in because of that, but I'll still move faster than I did before with like the 5-6 months of
that's what's so funny is because Bachelor is essentially a show about love bombing. Now, not necessarily in the way where the person's got a bad motive, but it's like, all right, how quickly can we get people falling in love?
Yeah.
So the producers are almost the one doing the love bombing. They're setting up these grandiose dates that you would never see in real life for your second date or whatever. But what was it like to jump back in, and also how much of it felt real versus just this like fabrication because you're kind of in like this little bubble?
Yeah, my heart was very open at the time I went. Luckily I was able to heal before going there, and I couldn't really tell how real it was or not. I was just like, let me just go for it. I might be gullible, but I just thought, I don't think this woman would go and do this show just for fame, just to be a star. Like, she could be an actress if she wants to,
Oh, yeah.
And Claire seemed very normal compared to a lot of other women that do reality shows.
We're big fans of Claire over here. But with we were able to watch this show and see her own issues, like everyone who has them, which is there's anxieties, there's cameras on you. It's like you just never know how you're gonna act until you're like in the center focus there. And with her, she obviously chooses Dale Moss. It doesn't last, but you just can't know. It's almost like she's just there to take the car off the lot. The lot is this prefabricated perfect place, and then you got to drive it through life's challenges, which is how much time are you spending at the gym as a guy, because you ain't doing the same amount of gym time when you're single versus when you're in a relationship. Like, things just have to change, and I feel like in most relationships that's the tango you got to do.
One thing I like to say about the Bachelor and the Bachelorette It's very real for about 6 people, right? Like 6 people. This is a really real thing. Like the Bachelor and Bachelorette know who they really like. You know, they're at least their top 10. And then I would say maybe top 6 by week 2. And I would say it's very real for those people because it can end up in an engagement and end up in marriage, as we've seen, and end up in kids.
Babies,
and,
wild stuff.
So I think for about 20 something other people, it's just a fun experience unless it doesn't go well for them.
Did you think you had a shot at first? And if yes, when did you feel like, oh man, Dale's running away with it?
So I knew I had a shot because you have to have that confidence in yourself.
Yeah.
And the fact that they chose me to be around that quality group of men, I knew I belonged there. Because I remember the first night I had a little bit of insecurity. I was like, man, I'm one of the shortest dudes here. You know what I'm saying? These dudes are jacked, like doctors, lawyers, former athletes, ran the gamut. And, but one of the producers that was working with me was like, man, you're in the room though. And I was like, you're right.
There you go.
I'm here for a reason. And so I just completely just believed in myself at that point. But I was very rare in knowing the connection they had because Claire had disappeared for a while and we didn't know where she was. Oh, yeah. And I wanted to talk to her. So I'm walking around. I'm like, where is she? I'm inquisitive. I'm a journalist. I see.
You got your little recorder.
Dude, it's like a quarter mile away. It's this beautiful park that's well lit and her and Dale Boss are sitting there. I'm like, that's not normal. Every other guy she's been walking around, talking to within eye distance. This guy, she's far away in this well lit park area.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's not normal. There's something there. And I actually interrupted their date. Right. So that's probably why it didn't last very long. I interrupted their date and I got to have extra time with her because I was in that far away park, which was really cool.
That's what's tough, man, because I don't know if I'd have the gumption to ever, I'm such a, oh, good to you. I'm the worst when it comes to that stuff. So, I don't know if I'd be the guy night one who just is well, I guess I'm not going to meet her because, you're just politely waiting in line like you're buying cold cuts. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and look, I mean, even if, she was criticized for, kind of choosing beforehand or whatever, but it's if she made the whole season last, she would have still had her eyes only on him. That was clearly they had a strong connection going into it. Now forgive me because this is, I always forget every season the second it ends. How long were you there for Tayshia's portion, or were you already out?
So I was already out.
Okay.
And you asked when did I know that I was no longer a candidate or whatever. Pretty much when she sent me home. We had a good those little mini dates at the rose ceremony, the cocktail party. We had an amazing date. And I can't really say what happened because you're not supposed to say what didn't air. But I'll just say it was amazing. She was laughing, and men, we know that getting a woman to laugh is very important. Yep. She was laughing. They gave me extra time because of my dodgeball stunt, so they gave me extra time with her. And we were laughing, we were vibing. We were next to each other, and the guys were looking at me like, bro, what did you say to her? Because she was vibing you, and I thought I was bare minimum safe one more week, bare minimum. So when she sent me home, it was week 2 when I was sent home. When she sent me home, I was completely shook. I was like, well, what
are you gonna do? Yeah, you did. You made her laugh. What else? At that point, you just don't check off one of her boxes.
Exactly.
Now, speaking of making people laugh, by the way, and cheers again. Congrats for doing your first stand-up show.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Let's dive into this.
Let's do it.
So, laughter is, I think, one of the best medicines that exist out there, and bringing people together. And what's hard is it's easy to laugh at random events as they play out, but what can be hard is to get on stage and laugh on and make laughter on command.
Yeah.
So tell me about that experience, getting into it. Have you always wanted to do it, and what was it like? Yeah,
so first of all, I have a lot of respect for you and comedians that get up on stage. It's one of the hardest things ever to get up and make people laugh that are staring at you. Your job is to make them laugh. And
yeah, it's weird, right?
Yeah.
It's a strange thing when you break it down.
It's not something I always wanted to do, but oddly, Dave, I always got anxiety when I would go to comedy shows. And I just never felt good. And I think it was a part of me because I knew it was something I needed to try. And my ultimate goal is to become a TV host like Ryan Seacrest and Steve Harvey. That's my ultimate goal. And so a lot of people ask me, hey, do you do stand-up? And I'm like, no. Well, there's this one guy who's this big producer in LA who was meeting with me, and he was like, man, you're doing yourself a disservice. I was like, So then I saw this Instagram live from this woman named Jen Gottlieb, and I got to meet her recently, a week or so ago, which is awesome. But she said, sometimes your dreams are on the other side of fear.
Whoa.
Yeah. Whoa. And when she said that, I was like, I'm terrified of stand-up.
And people aren't going to want to hear this because you can think of that. Everyone can listen to this and think of the thing that they're afraid of or that screenplay they've wanted to write. And it's like, yeah, breathe into that, because fear, those emotions are strong, which means there's like a burden that you need to break through.
Mm-hmm. And what I want people to know about it is you don't have to just rip the Band-Aid. I didn't just jump on a stage. If you're scared of heights, you don't have to just jump out of a plane. You can kind of take it easy. Like, I took a course, and so that helped. So I was able to learn how to write jokes, and then I was able to test them out in front of my class of like 6 or 7 people, and I could see where they were laughing. So then when I went on stage, I was like, I know I have something, as opposed to just going up and bombing.
Yeah.
So you can take steps to facing that fear.
I always talk about brick walls and like the Randy Pausch book called The Last Lecture. Have you heard of it? So he was dying of a terminal, I probably talked about this a bunch, but he was dying of a terminal illness, and he, I believe, was a professor at Carnegie Mellon, so very smart man. And when you're leaving being a professor, you get your last lecture. And he posted it on YouTube, and it went viral, and then it became a best-selling book. And and I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it because I don't want to give away the big twist at the end, but the whole idea of the book is to know that brick walls aren't meant to keep you out. It's meant to show you how bad you want something. The brick wall of stand-up, it might be seeing Chris Rock and going, I can't do that. But the ladder, or the stones you stack to climb up to the brick wall, are the actionable choices you can make, which sometimes is as simple as Googling, how do I do whatever it is you want to do? And then you can find somebody who's going to tell you, to do this first. Go to an open mic. Go to a class to learn how to write a joke. And then you see, like, okay, I can do that in front of 4 people. You can do it in front of 400 people. You just scale it up. But that's a good example of educating yourself in something that you might want to do. And a lot of people don't know if they would love it or not because of that fear. You almost convince yourself, like, oh, I don't want to do that. A lot of people, surprisingly, that do improv comedy don't do stand-up because it's getting away from this collective that you're on stage with. And I started with improv and acting and things like that, and then it got into stand-up, and then you realize, oh, when you're alone on stage, you strip yourself from as many variables that might exist, and you're just like naked with the crowd. You know?
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, so congrats on that. And like, what do you think you want to do aside from hosting? Like, do you want to continue to do stand-up? Are you going to be working on that?
I do want to continue to do stand-up. It is exhilarating. I mean, making people laugh. You're helping people have a good day, like right in front of you, you know? Sometimes you might say something and you made someone feel good, but you might not know. Like with stand-up, you know it right there, you know? And it's hard because you might not get laughs, and not every joke is going to be well received, as you know, but...
You know what a good set, I want to bring it back to The Rock. A good set feels like The Rock pile driving somebody and then walking around like with his chest up, and he stands up on the ring and kind of like stares at it. I had this show in Seattle, and I went there all by myself. We had a fun show, but the day before I got in, it was like last minute. There was an open mic nearby, and I was like, I'd never been to Seattle, and I was like, all right, I'll just go to this open mic. And I showed up, and I was like, I'm headlining next door tomorrow night, and I think they were like, all right, cool, we'll put you on. And then I met a lot of comics, and they were like, everyone's kind of like sniffing each other out. We're all a bunch of dogs, like, are you good? How long you done it? What we're trying to find out is like, do you suck or not?
Right.
And then I was like, yeah, I've done it for 10 years, whatever. And then I go on stage, and it like hit. Everything hit. And I walked off stage like, what's up?
I'm the man. What's up?
And then 2 minutes later, you're having a Diet Coke by yourself in the back. But like, there is that dopamine of like this rush that comes from having control over an aspect of an industry that is a complete lack of control. So it's almost like you're provided a wingsuit in an otherwise free fall, because entertainment, this world is tough, right? You're waiting on agents to tell you when you get a gig, you're going to castings and this and that. So if you can go on stage and make people laugh, that's the most control you can have in this town. And then everything else falls into place. Like everything has to fall into place when you put the time in to like learn how to communicate. And a lot of stand-up, which I still struggle with or like explore, is like, how can I change my vocal tone? How can I use more pauses? Like my biggest fear, whenever I'm editing something, you can see the audio, there's never a pause. And I'm like, I talk too much and too fast. Like,
Yeah.
air it out, Dave. You know, less is more. Make them come to you.
Yeah.
And that can be hard for me because all of my, I don't even call it anxiety, but that energy when you get on stage is like, come on, like, it's like that, you gotta like, it's like that rodeo where you have to like communicate as best as you can, which isn't always like chugging a Red Bull and yelling at people. Like that's not always the way to a funny joke.
We as people want to fill silence. It makes us awkward when things are silent. And it's something I actually mastered as a TV reporter, is letting people fill that silence and letting there be this awkwardness to it, because those are some of the best sound bites you get from people. Is like, you ask a question and then you just sit there and nod, and you feel like there's more, so you just continue to sit there and nod, and then you get more, you know. And so it's the same way with comedy. I'm sure when you have that moment of silence, it draws people in. They're like, what's next? What's next? What's he gonna say?
You got to build the tension, you know, bow and arrow style. You got to build tension to like give that moment. And great storytellers can like master that moment where they're just waiting. They always say like wait as long as you can before delivering a punchline. Now, of course, don't like put people to sleep, but that might be an eighth of a second. And that eighth of a second could be the difference between you sort of railroading the punchline and just like curb stomping it and going over it versus like that boom moment.
That's powerful.
So how, and by the way, that was so brilliant what you said about waiting for your subject to give you more. How did you come to that knowledge?
So there's this journalist named Bob Dotson who was on NBC News for a very long time. Some people might recognize his name, and they've definitely probably seen one of his stories before if they ever watched NBC News from the 90s on up. And he wrote this book, and it's called The Non-Question Question, where you sort of allude to something like, yeah, so Dave, so you've been doing stand-up for a long time, huh?
Yes.
So I didn't really ask a question, but
it encourages a response to fill the, because we're like, as humans, like just the mirroring that happens, like you want to mirror each, and you know, people actually said this about The Rock when he was on Joe Rogan this week, because he's so good in like at mirroring others that he'll give you the energy you give him, and like that makes you feel, when you're interviewing someone, I can imagine that takes the walls down. Sometimes people are nervous to be interviewed and you want to make them feel comfortable and bring them into the conversation, and the same is true for stand-up, where you just want to make sure you don't want the crowd to be nervous.
No.
You know, you want them to believe. I always talk about competence and likability, right? So like the crowd needs to believe you're competent, which means, you know, just being on stage and holding the mic the right way.
Yeah.
And then likability doesn't even mean that they like you. It just means that you fit whatever sort of like vibe you're trying to give off. Like you fit the character of whatever joke you're writing.
And you have to create your own comfortability. There's this girl that was in my stand-up class. She's 22 or 23, and she's gonna be a star.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, she's already kind of doing well on TikTok, but she just is really big on like, I have my notebook with me out here and my jokes, and I'm put it down right here. You probably didn't expect that, you know, and like the crowd like loses it, you know, but she walks them through her process. Like some comics are like terrified of people knowing that they have their jokes right there up there to reference if they forget it or whatever. She references it, you know, or like there was this bad open mic and she was like, oh, this open mic sucks, you know, and like she posted it on TikTok and it went sort of viral. So I just like that she's comfortable and able to walk people through the process. I think people appreciate that. Yeah.
And you learn that every audience is like a batter if you're pitching to them, you know? You need to treat everyone differently. And I love it when I'm at a mic and you comics be like, oh, this room sucks, whatever. And sometimes it is. Sometimes you just can't get out of it. The room sucks.
Yeah.
But a lot of times you can crack people. You can crack a room.
Oh, yeah.
You just need to like alter whatever you're presenting to fit that crowd. Yeah, it's, you know what's funny is I had this one show a few years ago. I was walking onto the stage and, you know, everyone's different. Sometimes you're really prepared and sometimes you're like, all right, let's just fuck around with this thought. And I forgot everything that I wanted to work on. I'm not kidding. This audience was cool, but I got on stage and had usually like a couple steps, you know, something comes to you, you know, and like nothing. And I just stood up on stage and was like smiling, waiting for that moment. And I started to get laughs from the crowd.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, I don't even know, and it ended up being like a memorable set. When you do hundreds, thousands of sets, you don't always remember them. But I was like, that moment where I was free and in the moment,
that's crazy,
cracked the tension in the room.
Yeah.
And you just don't know. Sometimes you'll bomb if you're not prepared. But I think it's like acting, where the idea with a lot of good actors is memorize your lines so that you don't need to memorize them. They just now exist.
Exactly.
And how do you prepare as a journalist for your line of questioning? Is it just about gaining as much knowledge as possible of your subject, or like what's that process like?
Yeah, so there's two ways to go about it. You look at their history and sort of things they've done before, or their background, because a lot of things that they've said before or done before, their history kind of explains a question for you. And you can go deeper with that question now. Say, for instance, I'll tell you this now because it's coming out tomorrow. But Ludacris is in a new Christmas movie.
Okay.
Yeah, called Dashing Through the Snow. And I interviewed him, and I saw on his Wikipedia page that he started rapping at 9. And in the movie, his character is like writing Santa letters as a kid. So I said, hey, your character's writing letters as a kid. You started rapping at 9 and writing rhymes. Did you write letters to Santa as well? And he was like, brother, I'm gonna tell you something that not a lot of people know. My first rap name was Kris Kringle. And I was like, what? And he was like, not a lot of people know that. And I got this nugget out of Ludacris that I'm able to share tomorrow. And so his first rap name was Kris Kringle, and he would write letters to Santa. And his name is Chris Bridges, so it kind of was a play on words as well. And I got that nugget out of him because I asked the question in that way of, you used to write rhymes at 9. And so I was able to get a nugget out of him that I would not have gotten had I not done my research. So one thing is researching and seeing their past. Another thing is wondering what people want to know. So like, what do people want to know about this movie? Like, why should they watch this movie? Well, what is it? Is it good? Is it long? Is it gonna keep their attention? I got to think about ways. I got to think about outside of myself. What will families who want to watch Christmas movies this break want to know about this movie? So that's how I go about it.
I love that because, so often you'll get these like press junkets where you'll have Matthew McConaughey just going down the line and then do 20 interviews in a row and they're all the same. Yes. And I think of the same. I generally get, when I get Bachelor interviews, a lot of times I get kind of leftovers of people that did the show a couple of years, or they're finally off contract. So when I go, I don't want to ask the same questions everyone asks Caitlin Bristow. I don't want to ask the same. I want to know like what hasn't been asked. And I always think that most contestants that were on the show, their personal lives are far more interesting than what happened to them on the show.
Yes.
Now don't get me wrong, that pays the bills, right? Pays the bills to hear a little tea about Claire Crowley. We love that, right?
Exactly.
But what's really interesting is finding out what motivates you, what brings you passion. So for you doing even the bare minimum research on Ludacris, you probably fill his like creative soul for that moment because he can talk about something that's interesting. And to be completely fair, you're probably not even as caught up in the Bachelor world as I am because I see all these podcasts.
Yeah, you do a lot of great work. You're always updating.
They're so lazy, these podcast hosts.
Oh wow.
They're so lazy. They're not like digging for like you're saying, like unearthing good things to talk about. And there's actually, do you know Andrew Schultz?
The name sounds familiar.
Yeah, he's just sold out 2 nights in a row at Madison Square Gardens as a comedian. He's got the Flagrant podcast. He's huge, but he's huge. He's a full-blown millionaire. He's huge. I mean, tours the world. But every question he asks was highly researched of his guests, and I think that's, if I'm going to take up your time and to have you drive around with me, I want you to know that I know a few things about you, and I think that's also a respect thing. If someone was interviewing me and they found out something that I go, oh shoot, you knew me from those days. Okay. Like there's those qualifiers, like knowing just something simple about Ludacris that probably let him go, okay, this guy's good at what he does.
Yeah.
And that takes you to the competence level, like I said, about anything in life, entertainment and creative, it's competence and likability. So you're competent by showing off all that, and then you're obviously likable in the way you deliver that.
And you never know how you can stand out to that person if you don't find out those nuggets and those things about them that are really interesting. Like your mom having gone to the same college as myself. Like that's huge. Like, I know who you are, but now there's even more relatability and more comfortability because you did that research. And I'm like, oh, that's really cool. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, a simple Wikipedia search.
Right.
No, but it does go a long way.
Yeah.
So you were typecast in a movie recently
Yes.
as a reporter.
Yes.
So is that because your agent knows you were a reporter and you've got reporter reel? I mean, like, casting directors are not visionary thinkers. They just want to be like, all right, you can do it.
Yeah.
Like, tell me about that process.
So, first of all, I don't have an agent, actually. I do everything that I get on my own, and I'm very proud of that I've been very successful on my own. And for that, I had already been taking acting classes, which was really cool. And, I did know the director, so I knew the movie was happening, and I knew that there was going to be reporters in it. But I auditioned, and I just used what I had learned from my acting class, injected that with what I had done the past 8, 9, 10 years as a TV journalist, and it just worked out. They just really liked the audition, and they felt good enough. And the reason I was very proud is because, like, I knew this was going to be a huge Netflix movie. I knew that this was going to be a big deal, so I can't mess this up. This isn't going to be some movie on Tubi, not to disrespect them, but this is on some small
We
platform.
love you, Tubi.
We love you, but I knew it was going to be on Netflix, and it ended up being the #1 movie on Netflix for a while.
And remind me of the movie?
They cloned Tyrone.
They cloned Tyrone.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Were you was that a nerve-wracking thing, having lines that, it's a little different than journalism. It's similar. It's better. You're not like an accountant getting into that world, but like it is a little different to have to show up on the spot, deliver, take notes, and all that.
Oh yeah, like I've done in real life. I've done live shots in front of stadiums of people, and was like, whatever. With this, there was like maybe hundreds of people around, because it was that last scene. There's like a bunch of naked clones everywhere, and like there was people everywhere, and I was definitely nervous. I was super nervous, and the director was like, "Hey man, you know what you're doing. You're good at this. Just do what you do. Do your reporter thing. This is what you do." And I was like, "You're right." And so I was like, "I got this." So I just did multiple takes, did it in different ways, and it worked out. It looked really good, and they gave me a good amount of FaceTime on that.
Oh, great!
Yeah, so it was really cool.
A lot of people don't realize in film and TV, you usually don't rehearse. Sometimes there's a rehearsal. Sometimes you shoot the rehearsal. And like, depending on, especially if it's not the main scene or whatever, if they're late on the day, you might just go in there and shoot it, versus theater, which is, months of rehearsal. It just doesn't work that way. And I was in an ABC pilot, and I nailed my lines. I had like, I had like 4 or 5, I had like a good quarter page, half page of lines. And we do the rehearsal. And my first project I ever did, I was 23. And we do the rehearsal, and then, one rehearsal, and then I get a note, like handwritten. The writers had changed my lines.
Oh.
I was so memorized to the previous lines. It was very hard to like go in there and completely change things around. But like that's the world. Like that's the world. You just have to kind of go with whatever they give you. So the preparation isn't always the memorization. It's just like knowing the character and feeling comfortable and being able to, like I said before, memorize something, but then being able to release it. So that's it. So was it just like a day shoot? It
was just a day shoot, and to what you were saying, like the more you research someone, the more experience you have, the more you are able to just do it. Like I'm taking salsa lessons right now. I'm going to salsa dance parties and stuff like that, social gatherings, and the more I take lessons, the more I'm able to like do moves now, and I'm like, oh, I didn't do that before. I just kind of naturally did it, and I was like, okay. So it's like the more you do it, the more you don't have to do a routine, because in class they'll teach you a routine, and now I don't have to do the same moves in the same order, because I'm building more experience. So it's like acting. It's like learning words. You learn a language not to memorize it, but to be able to use it for a tool to express yourself. Exactly. Now, would you do any more reality? Like, would you do a Bachelor in Paradise or a one of these other shows, or are you done with that? That's a great question. I've definitely been, in and out of wanting to do something else on a reality show. I was actually sent down to Paradise with ABC to interview the cast of Bachelor in Paradise this current season. Yeah. I didn't really post about it a lot. But I did share it on my story. But yeah, I interviewed Avon and Blake and Rachel, and Kylie. So that was really cool being able to like go down there and like
so you're
see
going
it.
to you're getting all these trips. Your passport's getting punched.
It's getting punched. That was really cool because I had never been invited to do Bachelor in Paradise. So I think going down there with ABC to do that was like a really cool experience. And I never knew how the producers felt about me. I'm like, did they like me? Did they not? I saw some of them and they were so happy to see me. They were like, man, we remember you from your season. You were awesome. So that made me feel really good. Like, even though you guys didn't cast me, like, you liked me. And that was cool.
It's so tough because I always talk about corporations and being psychopathic in the sense that they don't care about you. They're just everyone's trying to just keep their job. And I kind of feel that way about producers. Like, if they needed to throw you under the bus for the scene, they would have. If you had given them that chance, like, it doesn't really matter who you are. It like with Katie Thurston, right? She had a really rough going, and then as we record this tonight, she's making her appearance back on Bachelor in Paradise. And she had vowed to never. She was like, man, I'm done. She lost all that trust, and you just realize over time, all right, you know, they were doing what they do. I was just the chum who had to do it.
Exactly.
And life goes on, and then you do what's best for you. But so I don't know if I quite got an answer. Would you do it again, or would you actually do a dating show, or no?
I would do a Bachelor Nation franchise show. I don't think I would do any other show like Love is Blind or, you know, Love Island or anything like that, because I don't want to be known as a guy who's bouncing from show to show, and it's completely fine. But I'm in entertainment, so I don't want to be seen as like, oh, he's just trying to get more clout for entertainment. So I would stay within the family, the Bachelor Nation family, but I don't think I would do another show. Just 'cause I don't want to be seen as like bouncing around and
and you know,
just for fame.
It's kind of good because you didn't get that much exposure. Where you know, if you were say, I mean, even like take Greg Grippo, right? If you were like, he's known from The Bachelor. He was a finalist. He was kind of like that, he had a big deal there. So like, the pipeline from being heavily like seen on reality TV to acting is very limited. You know, even in the Bachelor world, the only people that have really flourished that were like stars would be Rachel Lindsay was just in something, I believe as a reporter too, and Nick Viall was in something as in a Lifetime movie. But those instances, I think those were the types of movies that were just using them to pull a little audience, because obviously Lifetime's got a female audience, so does Bachelor, and I kind of feel like that's like a short like bait where they'll bring people in just to get some exposure. But long-term success, you know, there's like different ways to do it, right? Like, you really do want to, I mean, in today's, sorry to veer off here, but in today's world, building equity is from building followers. And I kind of feel like that's sort of how you get in with your personality. So what's the plan for becoming a Steve Harvey, Ryan Seacrest? Like, because the way they made it wasn't the way you make it today.
Right. That is such a great question, and it's something I'm continuing to figure out as I go along. But it's so different. Those days are pretty much over, and so I have sort of a 3-pronged strategy, pretty much. So one is social media content and consistency, and so I've been coming up with a strategy. I have a photographer. We're gonna shoot some content. I really want to shoot content that can help people. So I'm gonna start focusing on like storytelling, writing, some of my reporting history, and like sort of try to build my following that way on social media. That's sort of a new strategy I'm starting up soon. So attacking social media, because you have to, like you said, you have to have the followers. That's another thing. Diversifying what I do. So we've already talked about some of the acting I've done. Doing comedy now will help get some eyeballs and will help with you know, branding and all those different things. So trying different things. And then the third thing, which is probably the most important, is coming up with your own ideas. Because if you're not chosen to do something, make your own way. Get over that brick wall. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Issa Rae did it with Insecure. You know what I'm saying? This guy out of the UK just started his own show as a webinar, and now it's been picked up. And so you can knock the door down. You know, Angela Johnson, who's a famous comedian, started off on MySpace of all things, and then Matt Rife. You know, he kind of, you know, blew up his way, kind of doing the YouTube thing. And so I need to, you know, create my own game show or do some type of thing where I'm not waiting for someone to pick me to host an American Idol. I'm creating my own. And so I've been coming up with my own ideas, some for television and some for social media. And now it's just acting. Yeah, social media is great. I mean, you can almost like, you can't necessarily, like when you're producing something yourself, you can't necessarily build your own set, but you can bring something to the audience. You can find your audience and find the game show.
I was actually watching Sylvester Stallone's documentary last night.
Okay.
He's the perfect example. I mean, he wrote Rocky. It's to change the trajectory of his life. And in today's world, like with stand-up specifically, most people that are like industry darlings, that like it used to be, if you got into the Montreal Comedy Festival just for laughs, that made you. You got a development deal and all these other things. Now it's like, look, everyone's going to be funny. Everyone's going to be able to make an audience laugh. Who's going to sell tickets and buy beer?
Right.
And that selling tickets and buy beer might mean something different for a game show or for whatever else you get into, but it's like, who's going to move the needle there? You're a charming guy. You've got all these different skills. And if you've got those skills and the other guy does, because it's Hollywood, there's 100,000 people that are all, it's like, what's the difference maker there? And that comes down to the proof that you've done it before, and that social proof is usually found online.
You just made a fantastic point. The social proof is now done online, and it's twofold. A lot of people look at it like, oh, this sucks that now I have to have followers to be able to do this. And then there's the other side where it's like, oh, I get the opportunity to do this that maybe I wouldn't if, in the days of non-social media. And so I was meeting with this woman who's a manager, a talent manager, and she gave me some tough pills to swallow. She was like, what is it that you want to do? And I told her what I wanted to do. And she was like, why you? Why would I pick you for this show? And I was like, well, I'm social, I'm fun, I ask good questions, you know what I mean? Like all the things that are kind of like, you can find a Joe Schmo on the street that can fit that same mold.
Right.
And I was like, I need to have more to say this is why. That social proof. So that's why I'm like, okay, I get where she was coming from. It was harsh advice, but it was great advice. And so now I'm like putting action into, I'm being more active and like doing my own thing to say, this is why you should pick me. I just built this following off of this YouTube thing I created.
Yeah. I've been getting some funny hate that I laugh at from people because like 2.5 or 3 years ago, my channel took off, but I did this shit for a long time.
Yeah.
And we're actually about to drive by the old Haha, which is right next to the new one. You've been to the Haha, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
and the Comedy Chateau.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the Chateau's right there. So the old Haha, they just moved a few years ago, but I went to that 11 years ago to the open mic, and we're in the Valley. I lived in Santa Monica at the time. It was an hour plus drive each way. I went 4 days in a row before going on stage.
Oh wow!
The first the first 3 days, I was out there just, these jokes just aren't ready, blah, blah, blah. And I just, that brick wall was kicking my ass.
This wasn't your first time doing stand-up, was it?
First time.
This was your first time. Okay.
I'd never gone on stage before. I was in a class.
Okay, so you were in a class too.
But I still was not like, whatever. Yeah. And then I was willing to drive 2 hours each day in the worst traffic in the world and go, nah, not ready. And then luckily, I kind of pulled myself up and was like, Dave, what are you doing? Get up there. And then there's no looking back. I don't think there was ever a mic after that I walked away from, and it's just a matter of belief, it's belief in yourself, but also I say that because, it was 11, 12 years ago, like it's a long journey, but it, you don't know where it's going to take you. And people aren't going to see the journey. So like Matt Rife gets a lot of shit because they just see him as this like crazy, successful 28-year-old who's beautiful. But like the dude's put in the time. I mean, he's put in the time and nobody sees that.
No.
Except for like close people. And that's that iceberg shit where it's like it's almost like I think people that don't understand the process will see how easy and effortless people make it seem when they're actually in that professional area, but no one sees Chris Rock when from all accounts I've heard, he was a horrible comedian.
Yeah.
I've heard that he used to stink it up, and you just see him crushing it on stage and don't realize
He's one of the best. One of the best ever.
So the internet does at least a good job of, I think, exposing people to the process, but it's hard to know what's going to hit and what's going to be the thing until that. It's like Rubik's Cube. You can be, I got to make my way back here. You can be, only a couple turns away from a perfect Rubik's Cube, but it might still look like shit.
Yeah,
and that's,
absolutely.
And that's the difference between, stinking it up in an audition room and then getting a casting director to say, bingo, you got it.
Yeah, I mean, you made all great points. Like, I just discovered who Matt Rife is, like, maybe a month ago. And, now I look at him, he's, like you said, he's a good-looking dude who's super funny and blowing up. it's easy for me to be like, well, why did this guy make it? How did he make it? Like, I saw some video that he did to promote this new Netflix special where he said like he's been grinding for 12 years. Like, he's 28. You know what I mean? So that means he's been doing it since he was 16. And I don't know what the grind consisted of, but that's a long time and a lot of people who are teenagers don't know that they want to be comedians or don't know how to put in the grind. And the fact that he did that, has been doing that, it's like, this is what you see, but it's been welded for a long time.
Yeah. And, I think in some ways, social media is just a tool. And for some people, they might get success early and not appreciate it. And I can tell you this, having seen some people who blow up online and seeing how miserable they are. I'm talking people that really didn't put all the bricks in place here.
Yeah.
And then they got this success. Up. And there's this example I had of this comedian who they would hide after, they were so big, right? But they would hide after their show so they didn't have to say hi to their fans because it was too exhausting to see their fans.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but also you're nothing without your audience, right?
Yep.
And Dane Cook gets a lot of shit because he was so huge he was a meteoric. He was the it guy selling out arenas and shit, but he would shake hands with every single person after his shows.
Really?
Like my wife knows, when we have people that come to shows, like I'm appreciative of it, but it is still work to make sure everybody gets a slice of gratitude for spending their hard-earned time and money to come out to a show. And I think for those that might have, I don't know, I don't want to say shortcut the sort of the season where you're earning that trust, but I think that the people that don't have at least a little bit of a struggle don't realize the maybe how the level of gratitude they should have for finally getting there. Does that make sense?
It makes absolute sense. There's a quote I've followed for a long time. The harder the struggle, the greater the victory. And I think The Rock is a great example of that. He struggled for a long time. He never realized his dream of being an NFL superstar, but became much bigger than an NFL superstar. Is probably the greatest entertainer, potentially one of the greatest entertainers of all time. One of the greatest for sure, but could potentially be the greatest. And I think people should appreciate their fans. There's people who pack out stadiums who years later could probably not even fill out a small venue. And so you have to cherish the moment when it's there and cherish those fans now as you have them, because like you'll be nothing without them. You know what I'm saying? Like, I tell people, like, these big companies like Google or Amazon, like, don't ever feel like you're a small part of it. Like, know that they wouldn't run without you. And that's how I feel about any fan. Like, one fan is just as important as all of them, because you're nothing without them.
Yeah, and a lot of times, people that find their like TikTok success or whatever, it can be like firecracker, short-lived.
Yes.
When it's kind of just like from a viral moment or whatever. But like, what you really want to do is build and engage an audience for life and let them grow with you and all those things that come with it. And I look at, I even look at, like, I can't begrudge people that grew up with wealth, but I grew up kind of just like, I had to work a lot of minimum wage jobs, Uber, you're scooping puke out of your car at 3 a.m. because some chick's 21st birthday. You know what I mean? Like, just the worst things. Yeah. And then someone's like, oh, the privilege you have. And it's like, all right, man, whatever.
Yeah.
If that's what you think it is, then you're probably not going to understand that, like, everyone in this town works hard. Everyone's got to hustle. And how's yours going to, like, rise above the other people? But also at the same time, you're not necessarily competing against them, because the brick wall, they're going to have their own brick wall.
Yes. Yes.
I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah. A lot of people call LA superficial, whatever, and I change a lot of people's minds in that when I say, like, imagine you moved from wherever you lived across the country or across the world, and went to this competitive city that's super expensive. You moved there not knowing if you'll ever be successful. You're taking classes that are super expensive, and you're working jobs that you normally wouldn't work just to maybe get your dream realized. That is a real hustle and a real grind that most people won't even make the move, let alone do it for 10 years.
Oh, the talent that's on a catering team making minimum wage, that you don't even know how close someone is to having that screenplay polished or whatever. So yeah. Dude, did I leave anything on the table here?
You asked a lot of things. I thought that you asked great questions. I love that you really, wanted to know a lot about me personally, and I appreciate that.
You can do a stand-up show with me soon?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
That'd be great.
All right.
Yeah.
You heard it here first. All right. Thanks again for doing the show. I appreciate it.
This was fun.
Awesome,
Yeah.
man. All right.